John Smith, and I'm here at beautiful Pinnacles National Park. You can see the high peaks up here behind me. I'm here tonight with my wife, Barry, who's going to be doing the filming, and we're going to talk about night photography. Now, a few things we've got to do before we get up and get into place to capture our night sky, and we're about an hour out from sunset right now. And a couple of things are just common sense. We are in a period here in Central California where we've just had no rain for the past month. We have blank blue skies, about 70-degree days. I know that sounds real good to most of you in the rest of the part of the United States and around the world, but we really need our rain here. So that was one reason I chose tonight. Landscape weather is just not happening for me, so I start thinking about night photography. Second thing is I have to look at where the moon is and what phase of the moon, and I'm just trying to capture pinpoint stars tonight. I don't want to do star trails. That can be for another video. So the moon actually set at about 1:30 this afternoon, and it's not going to rise till about 3:20 this morning. We will be well out of here and back in bed. All right, let's talk a little bit about equipment because that's important. I'm a Sony Artisan of Imagery Pro member, so I love using the Sony gear. I'm going to shoot tonight with my A7R4, and I have two lenses. This is the Sony 24mm f1.4, and this is a brand new Laowa, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, L-A-O-W-A 15mm f2. They're both rectilinear, which means you're not going to get that kind of weird bending around the edges, that barrel distortion. And I think it's really important if you're doing night photography, having a lens 24mm or less, and f2.8 or less, and as you can see 1.4 here, f2 here. That's going to allow more light gathering for less noisy images. This camera, the A7R4, is a fantastic camera for night. I've been using it more and more now, and I can shoot frames up as high as 6400 ISO pretty cleanly, especially for doing pinpoint photography. But again, with no moon, it's going to be really dark out here tonight. Apertures, we're going to shoot wide open. So that's why I'm buying the fast glass. I want 1.4, I want f2. That's the reason for buying the fast glass. By the way, the Laowa is not an autofocus, it's manual focus. It runs about, I think it was about 850. This lens is going to cost you a little more. This runs in the neighborhood of about 1800, if I'm recalling it correctly. So we're going to go ahead and walk on up the Bear Gulch Trail. I think it's important to find where you want to shoot. I'm going to look for some of the lava-formed spires that I can use kind of out in my foreground, and we'll talk a little bit more about that once we get up the trail more. So as you can see, I'm kind of looking for an area where I can get the high peaks, get the stars above them. I'm a little hesitant to put these gray pines in the scene because tonight we're going to shoot about 15 frames of the same scene. And in part two, I'm going to show you why we do that. We're going to get a much cleaner image using a particular type of software. And so if anything moves in the trees, it's going to be tough to align it because this software is going to look for the movement in stars as the Earth rotates, obviously, and line all of that up over the course of 15 frames. And then I will take one frame at the end to pull out really good exposure of my foreground area. That could be really cool. But again, if I get any movement in those trees, I'm afraid that it won't register right on the final image. So I'm going to continue up, and there is one more little lookout point that is right over there that I wanted to scout. And we're actually set up back down the trail a little lower. Keeps us a little further back from the high peaks. But we will see what this looks like. So we're coming up now to what's called the Condor Gulch overlook. Pinnacles is really well known for its condors, and I will put a link in the show notes here, take you to a video that we did about a couple of years ago on the shooting the condors up here. And yeah, this is what I was afraid of. That looks nice and still, but I'm already starting to feel a stiffening wind kicking up. So I think I'm going to go back down the trail to where we originally were, where I will just have the high peaks as my foreground and not have to deal with a lot of movement in these trees. So I'm going ahead and I'm going to go walk back down the Condor Gulch Trail back to where Barry is. And there she is, enjoying her dinner. And this is, I don't know why she's shaking her head, but she doesn't want to be filmed, but she is.
I'm eating my dinner.
You're eating your dinner. That's good, and that's what we're going to do for the next hour. So I want to swing around here, and I'm going to show you, that's my setup. I'm going to go ahead and shoot with the Laowa lens, basically because it's new and I want to test it. And this is a great time to go ahead and get your composition. And that's the scene we're going to be shooting. I'm going to be kind of composing it like that and putting the star field over it. And two things real quickly with the A7R4 is turn on your focus peaking. So when you focus, remember the Laowa lens is a manual focus, anything that's bright white or an edge, in this case basically the stars, will turn pinpoint red, and I just have to turn it until I see a ton of little red dots back at me. And number two, Sony has a cool feature called bright monitoring. I've actually added that to my trash can icon, and it allows me to gain the sensor so I can brighten the sensor when everything gets really dark out here, to kind of see just where, you know, I am focusing. So we're going to kind of cut it off now for about an hour and let the sky get nice and dark, and then we'll be back to you. So we are maybe about 35 minutes out from having it dark enough to shoot. So what I've done now is I'm starting to plan for, I've composed my scene and I've focused. So I'm not going to touch the focus anymore. Actually, I'm going to gaffer tape down the focus ring, but really with the Sony I don't have to, but it probably wouldn't be a bad idea. Number two, I got my aperture opened up all the way at f2, and I've dropped my ISO down to 200 because I'm going to shoot that establishing foreground shot that we're going to blend in later once we get all the stars aligned, and that will be in part 2 video when we talk about doing the processing on all of that. So that's what I'm doing now, and the reason I'm shooting at 200 obviously is so I can bring up that foreground and not have a lot of grain, because once I start shooting I can't tell exactly. I'm probably going to be somewhere in the range of 3200, I'm imagining, ISO, or maybe even higher, 6400, and I wouldn't want to be shooting that foreground at that time and then trying to really bring that out. So I'm going to go ahead and I've hooked in my cable release here. I've already got it framed up, and I'm going to turn the camera on and get to work capturing a couple of these frames of the foreground so we have one that we can process and blend in later. So we've wrapped up, we've shot our 15 frames out here. We waited about 60-65 minutes after sunset, and because I was shooting almost dead west, there was still a glow over the high peaks that we had to let get down a little, but we think it got pretty dark, and we did the 15 frames. Then after that, I did one exposure where I dropped the ISO down to ISO 200, went to f8, and I did a 20-minute exposure. I put it in bulb mode, the camera, with a locking cable release here. and left the shutter open. And now the camera is writing what we call a dark frame, which is going to hopefully subtract some of the noise out of the signal. So 20-minute exposure, 20-minute dark frame. Good thing is I can just pack up and carry the camera down and leave it on, and by the time I get to the car, it will have written that frame. We'll have a very low noise shot with that, hopefully. I do plan on doing more of these videos. We'll do one on star trails later on. That's a whole nother type of star photography. We'll do one on the Milky Way eventually. So we have a lot more of these planned as we go along. But I think it's time now for Barry and I to wrap this up. We have about a 20-minute walk down to the car, and then we got to drive back home, which is about a 40-minute drive from where we're at. So from Pinnacles National Park, west side, please plan on joining me part 2. That will be in about a week, and we'll walk you through the processing. And until next time, this is Don Smith with my wife, Barry, who you can't see right now, and we'll see you later.